You have had your brushes with the deep state, permanent Washington, whatever you want to call it. Tell us some of the challenges that they have thrown in your way.
It goes back forever. I always start with this. So Catherine Engelbrecht, my partner, when she started True the Vote, she started because she was a small business owner. She had two young kids, and really just she heard all these terrible stories about what happened in 2008, and she wanted to get in and help. And so she got a bunch of her friends, and they went up and started watching the polls or watching the voting the next municipal election in 2009. Just after that, she started True the Vote, and within a month, they burned all $30 million worth of equipment to the ground in the warehouse where all of this stuff was. $30 million, and then blamed it on her. In a period of 2 years, she had 27 different visits and audits from the IRS, the ATF, the FBI, OSHA. I can't remember who all came knocking on her door, knocking on her business's door, and saying, "Who are you?" All because she had the audacity to demand free and fair elections.
They're
And from
supposed to
there,
be on our side, Greg.
a
These are
hundred
people that are
percent.
supposed to be helping us get honest and free elections. They should be celebrating you and Catherine as the heroes that you are. So, what's
Catherine,
behind it? Where is it coming from?
it's really pretty stunning. So Catherine decided, God bless her, she's the strongest woman I think I know. I mean, between her and President Trump, we have some enormous strength of people that I know. But Catherine said, you know what? I'm done with this. All I asked for was a 501c3. I asked to be certified as a nonprofit organization. And the IRS wouldn't do it. They investigated her. They sent people knocking on her doors, going to see her friends, saying all this horrible stuff about her. Lois
Intimidation.
Lerner, yeah, absolute intimidation. Lois Lerner did all the stuff that she did. The Obama White House called her the most dangerous person in America. And if you look, Catherine's like the kindest, nicest person that I know. She's tough.
I don't know
She's
her, but I've spoken to her a few
a
times. She's very,
very, very, very
very
kind
smart.
human being. Very
Yes.
smart, very kind human being. And she just said, you know what? I'm I'm just going to sue the IRS. So she did. Took her 7 years. She finally beat them. 7 years and $2 million or something. Finally beat them. I think the lawyers got paid off by the settle or part of the settlement from Treasury, but she ended up getting nothing out of it other than satisfaction to knowing that she beat the IRS, and she did. She beat them. But we've been put in jail by a federal judge who was trying to force us to divulge a source. I went to jail. I was the one actually in the meeting, so she had no business being put in jail. It would have been hearsay if she would have said the name. But nevertheless, they put us in a medium security prison outside of Houston, in hopes that we would seal the or come out and just they would break us, right? They put me in administrative segregation, and ADSEG in a federal prison, medium security, is not a fun place to be. I'll tell you that. Catherine was in a really tough situation where she was in the prison. It was all over us refusing to turn over the name. They wanted to kill us. They wanted to kill the people who had done the analysis, and we refused, and they put us in prison.
For
Thankfully,
how
we had
long?
great we were only
Well,
in there for about 10 days, but the reason
that's
why there was,
a short
there was,
period of time, unless you're the one who's sitting there.
yeah,
I would
yeah,
go
that's a,
crazy in 10 days,
it
but
was, it was really hard. It hit Catherine a lot harder than it hit me. It was really difficult,
well, I'm
but
very
in
sorry for
it,
your having
but
served your
in the,
country and that's your
well,
reward.
thank you.
I think that's
Thank you for that.
disgraceful
In
and
in
pitiful.
the end, the reason that we got out is our lawyers wrote an amazing sort of an urgent action memo or whatever they call those things in federal court of appeals, to get us released, and only because the federal court of appeals ordered us released immediately. It was a one-line deal: release them from jail immediately. And so
Well, that
they
does
couldn't even
restore some measure of faith, but there are
they,
people in the Jan 6 uh, roundup that have not been able to have habeas corpus hearings that are just
It's
sitting in the Washington
unbelievable.
jails and rotting, literally rotting away.
it's
And
it's so it's so disgusting to me what they're doing to those people. But for us, I mean, they couldn't even these knuckleheads couldn't even figure out how to release us because we hadn't been charged with anything. And so there were no orders to keep them there for this period of time or whatever. And so they didn't even know what to do or how to release us. Finally, the court, that was on a Saturday, on Monday, the court then issued the actual ruling, which scorched this judge. He was a your listeners may not know, federal judges, even though a schedule, what is it, Schedule C judges that serve for life. Um, he was he was on what they call senior status, meaning he was just at home making his $200,000 a year in retirement, and he can come in anytime and take a case. He came into the court to take our case, ended up having to recuse himself. And the day before, when the new judge came in, the day before discovery was due, we have this site called Open Inc, open.ink. You can go in and look at all this stuff. It's open.ink/Konnech, Konnech. And we dumped all of our discovery into Open Inc, all of it. They dropped the case the next day. And so everything that we went to jail for, it was all gone. It all vanished. There's nothing they could do to, at that point, because they had improperly imprisoned us and so on and so forth. Well, that guy who had been arrested, the guy who sued us for defamation, had already been arrested in Los Angeles. I testified in the grand jury hearing that ultimately had him arrested. And the DA out in LA, who's a famous leftist, Gascon's his last name, ultimately just in the last few months did a settlement agreement with this guy's lawyers. Now, he was guilty. He was guilty of everything they accused him of in Los Angeles County. Everything. Guilty as he could be. And he moved to Singapore or somewhere and said he had permanently moved, but got Gascon to give him a $5 million settlement from the citizens and the taxpayers in California, to make him feel better because he got his feelings hurt because he had to go to jail.
So I was going to say a moment ago, I really want to inspire our voters to go vote and participate. And I'm going to do everything as you suggested that I can to encourage the most participation. And I think it's the best way we can push back. And as President Trump has encouraged people to do, just overwhelm them with our votes. But I've got to tell you that they have tried everything, as you and every other living American who with a brain and a conscience would have to say. They've indicted Trump, impeached him twice under totally fictitious circumstances. They have prosecuted him, persecuted him in 4 significant lawsuits, most of which have gone away except for Alvin Bragg's, which is still lingering out there. And Letitia James has got this huge amount of $110 million of Trump's money that she's holding as ransom. I literally don't know how the guy handles it. And he has beat them at every single turn. So what do we see? 2 days before the Republican National Convention, there is an attempt on the president's life. Now, as you and I were talking before we went on the air, I've studied the Kennedy assassination for 65 years. Our listeners have heard it. What happened on Saturday is eerily similar to me in what happened to Kennedy. You have a supposed lone gunman who was under surveillance by the Secret Service and police, who they claim they lost touch with at some point. But then he climbed a ladder, for God's sakes, and took an assault rifle with him. People in the crowd could see him. Why couldn't the police see him? We have a Secret Service sniper who is sitting there trained on the assassin for over a minute. And he waits to pull the trigger until the assassin pulls his trigger. hitting the president in the ear. And we are to believe that this was just all a series of coincidental events. There's one lady, a brunette, who was sitting behind Trump. I watched it on YouTube day before yesterday, and she is sitting there calmly filming. As the shots rang out, she didn't flinch, she didn't cower. She sat there and continued to film. Now there are people that have connected her with someone who it looks very, very similar to her, who is an assistant director of the FBI. I'm telling you, Greg, I am as worried as I can be for the safety of our president or our nominee of the Republican Party. I am concerned that they will not stop, that they will continue to try and assassinate him. And when all of that fails, I've been telling our listeners for a month, I don't predict, but I'm concerned that these people are so desperate that they will get us into a war, a conflict with Russia or China, and that they will suspend the elections on the basis of some national security claim. I want to think we're going to get it over the line. I want Trump to get in and cleanse our federal government. How do we protect against that? My strategy is just to keep talking about it so that enough people will suspect it or be concerned about it that they're, how dare them try it. But Tucker Carlson, everybody was saying they were going to try and assassinate Trump. And by God, they did 2 days before the convention started. Only by
Yeah,
the grace of God is he alive.
indeed. It was a catastrophic failure almost across the board on every single person involved in that. I've been doing advanced work for 44 years, and I can tell you that if that building was really looped in outside of the perimeter, or outside of the outside perimeter, which they're now claiming that it was, that is an outrage in and of itself. That line of sight that that guy had would be the only one that you would consider as an advanced type person, someone looking at this and saying, how do we best protect this guy?
Well,
That's what's called the hot zone.
I'm not
That
quibbling
that
with you.
building that building was in the hot zone. You
Totally. I mean, it was
have
a
to you
football
have
field away, and that rifle was good for 400 yards. So it was certainly something that would have been protected immediately. Leading me to the point, you called it a failure. I don't think it was a failure. I think it was absolutely planned, intentional, and that it was done by people of our own government. Now, I don't have cold facts, but you take all the circumstantial evidence that we have, and it's overwhelming that it was, in my mind, completely planned and orchestrated. And
and if I could just add one thing,
yes,
he a former president doesn't have a full complement of a presidential Secret Service detail. They have a post presidential complement of guys, and these people are amazing. I mean, I know many of them. They're absolutely amazing people. One of my best friends is married to one of them, and these guys are just unbelievably just true patriots committed to their job. Um, but but
well, I'm
what
not indicting the Secret Service rank and file, the people that were in the field, because like yourself, I've been to Mar-a-Lago many times. I have sat with the president in his office on two different occasions and have met a lot of the Secret Service people there. It's not a small staff by any means, and
right?
it's
But
not a
he would
small
have
staff
got
in the field. To
That's
me,
absolutely true.
this
But he
is
would
an
have gotten his full complement today.
yes, that's right.
The way the rules work is he had to be the nominee of the party,
I
right?
understand your point.
And you think about that. Okay, with everything else that's going on, you've got motorcycle policemen being relieved of duty because they helped get him to the hospital. You've got the head of the motorcycle unit, which is a very elite group. And these people are, I mean, this is an honor and they perceive it as an honor, who got fired from his job and taken off of that detail 3 weeks ago. I mean, you start adding all these things up, and the woman sitting behind him. I mean, somebody asked me about it when it first happened, and I said, "Well, that's a secret." And I just assumed, I mean, that's a Secret Service person, because the Secret Service puts undercover people in the crowd, right? And so that's who I assumed that was. Now we're finding out, well, maybe it was part of the FBI. Well, wait, what? What do you mean she was part of the FBI? How could that be? And you just can't say, oh, that was nothing or that was nothing, when there's 1,000 nothings out there. And there's something big that happened. And the fact that they're not talking yet is the biggest tell of all.
Well, this kid, Thomas Matthew Crooks, and I am I am open to the possibility that it was a coincidence. But he was in a Blackstone ad 2 years ago. And Blackstone, obviously, I mean, they own 5% of every Fortune 500 company in America. I mean, they are at the top of the pinnacle. I mean, it just makes you really wonder what is going on. And then, of course, there's no social media, no trail, no nothing about this kid. So was he recruited? I don't know. I'm willing to kind of take the position that at a minimum, they knew that he was a risk and they allowed him to proceed. They allowed him to get the shot off before they took him out. And this guy, obviously, this marksman, Secret Service marksman, was obviously good enough that he could hit him square in the middle of the head. My preference would have been that they hit him square in the middle of the shoulder, incapacitate him, arrest him, and then interview him, and we would know the truth. But of course, they weren't going to allow us to see that. And I feel like one of those right-wing conspiratorialists sitting here saying these things because it seems so improbable. But to deny what is in front of our face and our eyes and our ears and our brains, I think would be irresponsible and reckless of all of us. And I think we've got to stand up and take note and push back. Gregg Phillips, thank you so much. I wish we had more time, but I hope you will come back. And
Absolutely.
It's truly an honor to have you on. You have been fighting for our country for a long time, even before the rest of us knew that we had a battle to fight. And we owe you a debt of gratitude.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.